Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in the San Gabriel Valley, joined today by Robert Hidalgo. He's the clerk of the Mount San Antonio Community College District, a trustee there. I want to speak with you, sir, about some of the students at California's community colleges. 61,000 of California's community college students are what's known as dreamers. What that means is they applied for deferred action under the DACA program.
Correct.
Because they were brought here as children, and it's allowed them to stay in the country without risk of deportation. They can go to school, they can get work. The president said during the election he wants to revoke DACA. He made it very clear. And students, as I understand it, are in a panic. Is that fair?
That's a fair statement. You know, at Mount Sac, we ended up holding a forum shortly after the election, and it was very shocking to hear some of the things that our students were concerned about, and the fears are real. Many of them are DACA students, so they came in feeling some level of protection as students, that they would be able to get their work authorization and be able to apply. And you know,
but why do they think that? I mean, look, if DACA is repealed, their work permits, I mean, I presume they wouldn't be revoked. I presume they would be able to run them out. But aren't the DACA permits 2 years long? And so, you know, some of these kids are able to go to Mount Sac because they can get a job and pay for tuition and books.
Correct.
If they can't get a job.
Yeah, and I think it was really a failure of, you know, comprehensive immigration reform, not being able for that to happen at the federal level. At least some students felt like there was some small level of protection, you know, through DACA, even though it's an executive order.
Right.
You know, you're right, it could be rescinded, and there's fear that may happen.
And on top of that, while former President Obama said that if you apply for DACA, and almost 800,000 did, about 740,000 received the permit, we won't use this information to deport you.
Yeah.
Well, that's not legally protectable. I mean, the Trump administration can say, well, I got your name and your phone number and your address and your fingerprints, and let's go, time to get deported.
Yeah, and that was one of the fears that came up when we had our student forum, is that there was a fear that they're now in this registry.
Right.
And that, by the fact that they tried to follow some steps to get a work authorization, that now they might have been making themselves vulnerable by doing that.
And which I got to think is frustrating.
Yes.
Because President Obama, I mean, I can hear him saying, look, we're not going to use this to deport in the future. But he's not the president anymore.
Right. And
the new administration can do as they please, because it was executive action. If it was a law, that'd be another conversation. You've had dream centers at Mount Sac. Do you want to keep dream centers open in this environment?
You know, we had that conversation, and our intention is to provide as many resources as possible to our dreamers. Even if you look at AB 540,
which is the California
Dream Act. But
what does that do?
That
essentially, broadly.
Yeah, essentially what it does is that it allows students who have gone through high school, or have demonstrated that they've been here as a child, gone through high school, that they can show proof or transcripts of having high school diploma, that they have the opportunity to go through and become an AB 540 student, which would make them eligible at that point for state financial aid.
In-state tuition.
In-state tuition, correct.
Now, I would presume, you know, I'm a lawyer, but I don't practice anymore, that the state could do that, but immigration law is a federal issue.
Correct.
And so I don't know what Mount Sac or California could do if the federal government says we're revoking DACA and it's time for these students to leave.
Right. And there's always that risk of that threat of federal funding being removed.
We got to talk about that because that's a fascinating one. I mean, I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to this stuff. You know, during the 60s, when President Johnson was pushing for desegregation, what did he say to school districts? If you don't desegregate, I'm going to pull your federal funds. Well, President Trump could do the same. If you don't give me the names of your undocumented students, if you don't allow federal immigration agents to walk onto your campus. I'm going to pull your federal funds.
Right.
I think he has the right to do that.
Right, and that's another conversation we had as well. And I feel comfortable in saying that Mount SAC is well positioned enough that in the event something like that were to happen, we still have the resources and the scholarships within to be able to provide support services.
Are you willing to see those federal funds evaporate? I mean, that's a very significant move.
Correct. I mean, that would be pretty detrimental, to the college if that were to happen. But we're making every effort to make sure that we provide support services for all students.
Right.
And when students come on campus, many times the professors and people on campus, they don't know whether they're undocumented or not. So we try to provide services for all students.
Your superintendent has declared that Mount SAC is a safe haven.
Correct.
Those words have power.
Yes.
Those words have meaning, and that could be translated to mean we are now a sanctuary campus.
Right.
Those are fighting words to the Trump administration, sanctuary campuses.
Right.
What do you make of the decision of the superintendent? Or we can even take it more broadly. Should schools declare themselves safe havens, sanctuary campuses?
I believe that even prior to this election, many of the things that we outlined in our resolution and that our President Scroggins put forward, many of these things are really reaffirming the things that we already do.
Right.
There's nothing really new that we're saying outwardly. These things have been really put in place from the very get-go. But what our students needed was some reassurances that this is a safe place, that they can apply to the college, that they can be students without fear of their student privacy being compromised, or college officials serving as federal agents.
But privacy is not an issue. If you're a dreamer, they have your information.
Correct.
And so, I mean, if an agent comes on campus and says, "Where is student XYZ?" Is it violating privacy to say where student XYZ is?
I think it is. They would need to come with a subpoena, something of that nature, in order for us to really divulge any kind of privacy, information.
And what if they do?
And if they do, at that point, we can say.
Make it. Yeah. I mean, that becomes a whole other conversation.
Depending on what the circumstances are. But
here's a question, and I'm just going to play this out. Should a public institution be expending significant resources on an individual who is not a citizen? Should we be spending public dollars on non-citizens?
I think that's a very important question. When you look at many of the students that we have at our colleges, they've come here as innocent children. They're living in the shadows. They don't, many of this.
Draw a line somewhere.
Correct. And many of these students had no choice. They came over because their family brought them over, and so forth. So, especially with students under those circumstances, it's really hard to say, go back. And one of the things that was shared by some of our students was that, if I get deported, they would be sending me back. I have no family there. I don't even speak the language.
I mean, I'd speak Taiwanese or Mandarin or Spanish or whatever it may be.
So that was one of the fears also that came out, is that, and not just for themselves, and really what happened at that student forum that we held, is it wasn't just DACA students, it wasn't undocumented students, it was also our LGBTQ community that they were very, very, very scared.
His name is Robert Hidalgo. He is a trustee, the clerk of the Mount San Antonio Community College District. My name is Brad Pomerance in the San Gabriel Valley today. You're watching us on Local Edition.